Don, how are we getting out of here in emergency?
So there's a few different exits that you can use. If you go through this door right here, behind the monitor, there's a door that goes right outside. You can go through this office next door to another office where there's a door, and then you can go out the hallway. So there's 2 or 3 exits available to you from this spot.
Next item on the agenda, item number 3, superintendent update.
I do not have an update.
Item number 4, town manager update. Ed, do you have anything to share?
Well, we've got an interim finance director in town now. So we'll be bringing him up to speed on the bond issue prior to the meeting. So we got to start over there. So we're in better shape than we were last meeting.
Oh, we got that later on the agenda, right? Presentation of SBC project concept and finance discussion. Bill?
Good evening, everyone. I will maybe.
So make it a little bit bigger. This thing is very slow to respond.
So this presentation is really a draft of what we may be presenting next week to town council. In advance of the enabling legislation component, which is the goal of the next town council meeting that Mario Carino will be present at and can speak to. So this is really not the presentation and information regarding the stage 2. That comes at the following meeting, and then the vote after that meeting. This is really to give them an update of where we are and to seek this enabling legislation. This is just the cover slide. We can go to the next slide. I saw this sign as I was shopping at Christmas, and I quickly snapped a picture of it because I do think Coventry is in a position where they should and can expect more. And because of the structure that's being set up for Coventry with support from the school building authority, really pay less. All right.
You might have a copyright infringement there.
I'm sure I do it. I do it quite often. Wouldn't be the first cease and desist letter I've gotten. Okay. So I'll tell you about one from Disney. It's hilarious. This is a generational opportunity for Coventry, where we are looking for $100 million worth of projects for $30 million in a very simplified statement. Next.
Oh, you gotta make sure we put disclaimers anywhere about does not include interest.
Interest? Okay,
Yeah, I
that's
don't,
fine.
yeah, just so we can avoid that comment.
Sure. That's very fair. Again, graphically, we just want to
Mhm.
show that we have the opportunity here now for $70 million in state aid. Next. I think it's important to remind the town council and the community that your neighbors have recently passed projects here that range from 50 million in Westerly to 350 million in Warwick. And that the state has passed an additional $250 million bond that Coventry approved at a 64% rate. So that's now $500 million that Coventry has voted upon at the state level that is being used throughout the state.
One thing this made me think of, and this is semi-related to this, I don't know that it needs to be in this presentation, but the one for the 24th. We need to demonstrate that the consolidation concept is being used on a lot of other districts.
Okay.
I think that's obviously tangentially related to this, but we're talking about other communities taking advantage. So just a thought I had when I had reviewed this, making sure that we show that we're not the only ones who the state is encouraging to do that.
And in the spirit of the NFL playoff season, Mike Ditka said that success is about taking advantage of the opportunity. Clearly, these districts have.
So verbally, having the statewide and having that it's the newer bond. Makes sense, but I wonder if we could make it stand out more in a slide in case people go and take a look at it after. Because the fact that these other projects are based on the original bond. And that this 250 million was just the bond in November, and Coventry approved this additional money for the state. And now we should take advantage of it.
Yeah, good point. Okay.
What is the purpose of the Coventry approval at 64% right there? Because it doesn't say on there how much Coventry is. I know we haven't passed one yet, but if we do, that's what it is. Like,
No,
We have
when
to
the
know.
state has asked the community of Coventry, will you support $250 million?
oh, I get it.
On the last
Coventry
figure.
said
I
by
get it now.
64%, yes.
Yes,
However, you are not bringing that
yes.
back to
I
your
get it.
community.
I think
Sorry,
the at
Mr.
is confusing. I might use the word by or something like that.
Well, like I said, just
Yeah.
Maybe
having,
in the
pulling it
last
out.
Vote, yeah.
Make it its own slide first and then say, or.
Yeah, no, we could certainly, that's why we want to have this discussion. I certainly will.
Sorry if
revise
you
that.
already said that. I'm
No, no, no.
typing here, so.
No, perfect. This is absolutely fine.
And
Next
I
slide.
don't know if there's any benefit of adding more to the list or not, but. Kim talked about these communities being on the last round of 250 million. There's a lot of other communities. that are
So
on that
we
last
could do,
round as well.
we could split this up, make this a lot easier. We'll split this up into two slides. And this was the previous 250 million, and the new 250 million, these are ones that have actually passed.
Mhm.
Now, I know the amounts of the ones projected. So the first slide will be what has passed, the second slide will be what is projected. And in both cases, we can revise how we.
Now, how does our amount compare, though? Are we gonna look like we're swinging for the fences or are other communities going way higher?
I think this.
Oh, way higher.
No, this is this is last year's. I'm
Oh,
saying
gotcha,
the
the-
projected
The
ones.
projected ones?
Yes.
There will be others just as high, if not higher.
Okay.
You will not stand out.
All right, that's what I was. And,
For the size of our town, we should.
oh, I know. I'm just saying, you want to make sure everything.
100%.
And the approval rating was higher, wasn't it?
This was 64 for the new one. When I split this into two slides, I will have the approval rate. for the
Coventry's
previous
approval
one.
of the 2022
20
bond
yes.
question.
Coventry's approving other towns' projects. It's time to approve. ours.
Yes,
Yes.
Paying for 'em.
so the agenda for the evening will be to talk about the proposed project and go over any financials, the approval process, and update on the stage 2 submission schedule, and then any next steps or questions. Next slide. So the proposed projects as they stand currently is the new Coventry Elementary High School, which is a consolidation of Tioga, Hopkins Hill, and Black Rock for over 1,000 students at a proposed site right now located at 1101 Tioga Avenue. That property is for sale. That is what we need to talk about to make sure what we're saying here is actually true. There's an assessment ongoing. I do know that the site was vacated in 2005 and the building was demolished in 2009. So that property has been there for quite some time. Now, maybe we should just, now you have it later on the agenda about this assessment of the property, correct?
Yes, we have it next after this.
All right, so we'll update this slide accordingly. Next slide. I think it's important for the town council and the community to know that the property purchase is also eligible for 70% reimbursement. This is the proposed location that we are including in the stage 2. You see its proximity to Coventry High School. Lower left-hand corner, circa 2009 was where the existing building is. That's the approximate location of where any new building would also be located. Next slide. This is just a graphic representation of really what we're talking about from a community-wide standpoint. We know where your schools are located, their current capacities, and in a very simplified visual, what is planned about consolidating these and relocating to a new site. Again, we just have some renderings of the site. We've also started to look at what the wetland limitations are and how that will impact the building. And as I showed you in the previous slide, our new building will be similarly located to where the existing building was.
Is that bank drive-through on separate land?
Yes,
So it's owned by citizens?
that's someone else.
Okay.
Although there does appear to be a strip of land that is owned here, but this is not expected to turn into a roadway. So don't, if someone sees this, this is not going to be turned into a roadway. And probably not easily done without significant amount of work,
Because that,
because it's crossing wetlands and everything else. I mean, I don't want to say you'll need a bridge, but you would need a crossing, and it really would be outside the scope of this project. So we want to work with all of the site circulation that we currently have. The next project is the Coventry High School, which includes at this point gymnasium improvements, auditorium improvements, science lab improvements, and fitness center improvements, as well as the fire suppression system enhancements. Right, next slide. I believe I may have included some visuals here. So although this is a snapshot from some neighbors, this happens to be Narragansett High School, but the work associated at the high school gym, the floor and the bleachers, we can make your high school look even better than your neighbor. This happens to be a fitness center in Massachusetts. Again, this is the minimum bar. We will exceed it. You know, I imagine the performances that Coventry High School puts together are top notch, and they probably need the equipment to support that level of performance. And certainly we want to improve, as we mentioned before, the science lab casework with the high school. This is
So,
all part of the facility, it's equity.
yeah.
Yep.
So I didn't go to Coventry High School. When you say fitness center, do you mean weight room? Is that what we're talking about?
there's actually two spaces. One space is a weight room that looks just like that. And if you drive around the building on the field side,
Mhm.
there's a garage door that they sometimes open, so you can see the equipment inside. Inside the gym, inside the school, there's also I call it a yoga room. It's a more open space,
I remember seeing
and it
this,
has
yeah.
like bikes and treadmills and things like that. They both need some work.
Mhm.
But the weight room has some nice equipment in there. It's just the room itself is not.
Yeah.
A great space.
Attractive. Sure.
And then what does the term casework mean when you say that for the science lab?
Tables with the
tables.
tops and the cabinetry that surrounds it.
Okay.
It is obviously original. Next is Western Elementary, where we know we are starting with the domestic water distribution, the well, the piping and the fixtures. But expanding upon that scope of work could include, and this is what we're holding as placeholders now, cafeteria improvements, media center improvements, and high impact visual enhancements. Go to the next slide to just show some examples. You know, just because you have a small space does not mean you cannot have some big ideas to improve the quality of that space in the cafeteria. Similarly to the media center, that we can probably do some things to enhance that. Those are just examples from other schools. Washington Oak, right now we're holding about 2.5 million for facility improvements that would focus on deferred maintenance and high impact visual enhancements that may be necessary because the building is, you know, starting to wear. And the middle school building envelope improvements such as the roof at a pretty considerable amount, 3.4 million. And that's probably not enough to do all of the roof areas. We will do the high priority areas.
And I'd imagine the areas that you aren't later going to
Demolish,
demolish,
correct.
yeah.
In summary, this is how we have arrived at $100 million worth of work. And if we look at the financials at a very high level, if we look at it in terms of expenditures and revenue, right? The expenditures, these are the dollar amounts associated with each school. They get you to $100 million. If we look about how we're going to pay for this $100 million, we're projecting 80 million that is bond funded. The facilities equity grant, state share, 3.2 million. PAYGO at 8 million. the pay-go equity adjustment, which is the additional support from the school building authority of another 8 million. And then we're projecting 800,000 in either a combination of bonuses that you would get from the facility equity initiative projects and also property sales. And so if we look at the asterisk that I placed on the property sales right here, you'll see that we're assuming $25,000 an acre for a land value of 1.1 million. Tioga and Hopkins Hill each are at 10 acres and Black Rock is at 27 acres. So what we're saying is we are suggesting you have 1.1 million in land value. We're saying out of that 1.1 million, we're going to grab 800,000 partially from the land value, and the other portion comes from bonuses that we would get on the facility equity grant projects. So with the financials comes some operational savings. So we're consolidating 3 schools to 1. Now, this is our estimated projection of $1 million based on operations. This is energy savings, some administration savings, transportation savings, etc. So we're working with the district to, back up that $1 million.
The other thing we talked about today, I didn't get to talk to Phil about it, but we're also looking at our capital list. And I worked with Harold and Russ on this, and some of this is also going to be deferred maintenance because there are projects that need to happen in the next few years that if we don't have to do those projects because we have a new school,
And I believe that's the next slide.
there you go.
Oh, no, actually, it's the bond council information, but there is a slide on here
Mhm.
that talks about what's the cost of doing nothing, which is that deferred maintenance
Yeah.
that you speak of.
Like we would, I'll give just an example. We would talk about paving. Almost every one of our schools needs paving done. Depending on how big the land is, the clip could be pretty large. We don't have to pave 3 schools as a priority. That's not a horrible thing. That's deferred. So here, Harold, I had emailed with Hillary, and I think Hillary, you emailed with Ed about getting something from Steve.
Yeah,
We didn't expect we'd have it for tonight because there wasn't a lot of turnaround, but Harold did do a workup of, it's a similar spreadsheet. It's not from Steve, but it's Steve's layout. And he has that. You can explain, Harold, what you did.
Well, do we want to finish the presentation here or?
It's up to you, Phil.
Oh, I'm fine, Harold, go ahead.
Okay. So basically what I did was, I went with 5.5% and then 6%. Because I felt like 4.5% was a little low. I would rather see Steve come in with a lower number and go with our with the towns. Yeah.
Thank you.
With the towns, yeah. Contractor and get a feel for where municipals are right now. I didn't feel comfortable with 450, so I went with the 550. On these sheets, you'll see we started off with the 5.5% at housing aid of 69.2%. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the total tax rate impact on per thousand assessed value. Do you want me to go through how we went through this?
I don't think you have to go through all of it.
Okay.
We've done that a few times, but
Yeah.
this is just giving folks an updated, maybe just a preview of what it looks like at $80 million with the 5.5 and 6.5. If Steve comes in with a lower rate of 4.5,
Then I think we're-
that's just,
Yeah.
gravy. I think that's even better. But when Phil was working on the presentation and I knew we weren't gonna have anything for this slide yet, I just figured I'd have Harold work something up just so people had something to look at. Did anybody have any questions?
Any
on Harold?
questions on?
So this is a bond amount of $80 million,
Correct.
5.5%.
Yep.
And you're working through here. The principal would end up being the principal that the town would pay or the total principal?
The total, well, okay, so
You have two lines, so I guess I'm confused. Are you doing the 2, 5.5 and 6 here?
no, this is 5.5 here.
Okay,
Okay, so the bond is on the left side. This is if you had no housing aid whatsoever. The left side, so you have the principal and interest right there. So the principal is 67 million and the interest is 81 million. Do you see that?
mhm,
Okay. Then you go over and you move it over to where the prorated bonds are, the principal and interest. And then you take the housing aid off of that. So it's 74 million and 90 million, which is a total of 160 million.
okay.
But with the housing aid, you're subtracting 114 million.
Mhm.
So your total debt service is 34 million.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You've got a total on principal of 67 million.
Right, which I just noticed that's.
It's 80 million.
Right, on an
borrowing, so that's
$80
67 is.
So I gotta look at that. I thank you for bringing that up, but
Yeah, I think that's where I was getting lost too. is-
let me look at that again.
What's on the next page?
It's 76.
Is it because of the pay-go?
What?
Is it because of the
It's
pay-go?
pay-go is 16 million. Because you got a pay-go down here.
Yeah, but the pay
Yeah,
go
but-
comes off the 100.
Yeah, that's
coming off the 100,
not coming off the.
No, it's coming off, it's coming off. So, okay, so I gotta work with this a little bit
All
more.
right, so
But it gives you a sort of an idea of where we're going, but that's why we have the contract, the contractors coming in. Yeah,
And that net cost is not including interest, correct?
correct.
Okay. So it's close up to 35 mil at the end of the day. At
Which is
the
net cost.
5.5.
Net cost. is
Steve
231
will come in with the
With the final
with the
amount.
solid finals. I think this
Yeah.
was just
I put this together as quickly as I could so that we could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
But
think
either
that's
one
it.
is less than 50 cents per thousand
Yeah.
to the tax.
I think the goal, I think, of this was to have this projection, a very simple one for the town council to see, so that on the next slide, we can make it even a little bit more simpler in that the debt service payment per year, that this is just close. I'm assuming is 1.8 million. So for context only, because I don't think it's right to make comparisons, but if you wanted to put it into a context of amount per person per month in Coventry, $4.25, or an amount per household per month is $10.42. We think this is this generational opportunity to move Coventry forward.
This is at the 34, well, not the 34, if it's at the 1.8,
So if you scroll down, yeah, I mean, sorry, go up.
it would be at.
I looked in here, I
The
looked at this old
47,
one, so,
okay.
you know, we'll want to use the
Okay.
more correct one, so that 1.8 may be 1.9 or 1.75.
yeah, whatever Steve brings in.
But the goal is to just put it into a very simple context for the town council and the community when they see this, of what the impact is.
And I think simple is best because it could just say, this is the overall principal interest cost. This is the amount the state's taking care of. This is what it'll cost per person.
Yeah, and that's why, and I actually did it by household and.
I like household.
Household made a lot more sense
Yeah.
because, yeah, taxes are paid by household, and when I looked at your census information. You know, that is based on all 35,000 people in Coventry. I think that was the number, but obviously not all 35,000 people are paying taxes. So that's why I did it by the house.
And we're explaining to, that's not every single year. That's just to get the bond.
I think it's every year that the bond is existing.
that's
Yeah,
on
I
the
mean,
books.
basically, if you have to pay 1.8 million
Yeah.
every year, then every household is contributing $10.42.
Right.
A month.
A month.
Yeah, but we don't want people to think that that's how much the taxes are going up by every year.
Right. If
Yeah.
it's a one-time addition and goes. on
That's my
forever.
point.
Yes.
I don't want people to think, oh, my taxes are going up by $120.
Once it gets baked in, it's in.
That's my point. I don't want
So
people
this
to think.
baked in thing,
That
I
was the
think
point
is
that people had
important.
a hard.
Yeah, so we
time
need to figure out, let me think about some ways that we can simplify that message, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, I got some ideas. All right, let's go to the next slide. We talked about the cost of doing nothing. There are warm, safe, and dry deficiencies at Hopkins Hill, Tioga, and Black Rock. From the 2017 statewide assessment, it was projected that there was 10 million in need. Our assessment in 2019 escalated as it brings that number up to about 17 million. So cost avoidance savings that Don had just mentioned could be applied towards the cost of a new school.
They all need new windows, they all need new driveways. I mean, there's just so much that has to happen at those schools.
That doesn't change the educational value of those schools.
No.
Well, that's exactly my last comment here was this asterisk next to this. There's no programmatic improvements.
Mhm.
And it does not include other schools, the high school and the middle school. So the approval process for everyone's benefit is that there are 3 approvals that are required and they can be in any order. One of them is the RIDE approval. That's the stage 2 submission that we're working on for you. The other is legislative approval. This is the enabling legislation that Mario is going to speak to. And that is the goal of the town council meeting. And voter approval, which is through a bond vote, which right now we're anticipating, I have May 10th. That may not be the exact date. Those are the 3 approvals that we would need to move this forward.
Yeah. Title 17 has to be on a Tuesday.
So this is where Mario will be speaking to explain to the town council what this enabling legislation approval is, what it means. I don't want to speak.
And he sent
too
us
much.
he sent us some drafts of legislation that's been passed in other communities.
I think I do mention in next steps here. Well, let me just see. I thought I may have had a slide on what. Oh, yeah, I do. I have it. Okay, we get to. No, go back up. So just to give you an update on the stage 2 submission. Our documentation is ongoing. The estimator has our drawings. We're going to present stage 2 to town council on January 24th. And we're going to seek town council approval to submit on, I think this is now February 13th, not February 14th.
No. that-
14th is a Tuesday.
The 14th, we moved to the following week. I think we were gonna look at having the vote the
I
first
think
week
we
in
decided to
February.
move it up now, though.
Yeah, I think we looked to have it the first week in February. I'm just writing a note to myself. I have to set that.
And that's
date.
fine. I'll just want to make this more right than wrong.
On my list, I have us approving it on February 9th. February 9th. meeting.
All right, so we have to go after it.
Not necessarily. Both of you, either one of you could kill it. So it really doesn't matter who
Okay.
votes first. Don and I ran through that quickly. So the school building committee needs to make a recommendation before you all can vote, either the school committee or the town council. That appears to
The
be
18th, next meeting.
January 18th. The school building committee will make a recommendation to submit the stage 2. Then we have 2 meetings with the school committee, an introduction and then a vote, and 2 meetings with the town council, an introduction and then a vote, which may be February something.
And what date is SBC going to first presentation for school committee? Did we decide?
I don't know if we did.
You
that.
guys-
I saw the notes from last time. I can go,
You guys meet on the 12th or the 29th, right? Something like that.
whatever you have.
So we
12th and 26th of this month.
well,
I-
we just,
I have
We
a
took the-
stage 2 presentation, right?
yeah,
Stage 2 presentations,
stage 2 presentation for the school committee is
26th.
the 26th. That's the presentation to the school committee,
And with the vote being the next meeting, which is February 9th.
and February 9th.
I don't have the notes in here. Meeting minutes, do you want me to put them in the folder?
What's that?
Do you want those meeting minutes to be approved those?
You know what, I
We didn't-
seem to have forgotten to put on the agenda to approve the meeting minutes, so we'll have to approve
We have a
two.
couple, yeah.
We can do two at once next
Okay.
meeting. I
Okay.
even already shared them with every, I think I
You
shared.
shared them.
I
Yeah.
forgot to put it on the agenda.
The
So
dates?
do you think it would be beneficial for the town council to know the school committee schedule next week? Or right now I just focused on them in this presentation. Um, I don't want to throw too many dates out there to confuse people.
I think have them in your back pocket.
Okay,
Yeah,
All right.
I'd say keep council dates on the slide, but if someone
Have
asks
them
about
be
school
aware.
committee, yeah.
gotcha. Okay. All right, next slide. Which is next steps and questions, and this is where I wanted to make sure I was clear. So that we're looking for town council to vote to enable legislation for a bond vote. But it's important to know that this is a procedural action to continue with the submission. It is not the approval for stage two, and it is not an approval to bond. That's what I want to make sure town council understands.
I mean, I think
And-
Mario said even if they approve it, like this, the General Assembly approves it, if no action is taken, it just dies in the vine.
It's similar to what happened last.
So. I wonder if the word is more so authorize. Because it's technically the motion is to authorize the General Assembly to transmit enabling legislation.
Oh, yeah, so we certainly,
Yeah,
I should write this one down.
um,
I need that.
and then
So let's.
I only know the answer to this because I'm on the committee, but we need to, I think Mario's gonna hammer it home in his slide probably, but. Why I'm seeing a 100 number and why I'm seeing an 80 number on this resolution.
Yeah, and I would defer to Mario. to
Yeah, I'm
explain
just
that.
assuming
Yeah.
he'll do that, yeah.
So you had said town council to authorize,
To vote to authorize
to vote to authorize.
enabling legislation for bond vote. General Assembly enabling legislation.
And you have to have the legislation, the draft. Done,
So,
or is that something we just?
I'm working with administration to finalize the council's resolution. As soon as that is final and posted. I'm forwarding it to Norway and
And
Raptakis,
they
so
can
they
do
can
that.
get the Senate and the House side going. So they're waiting for it.
That's good.
All right, so that's fine. There you go. Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry. Certainly, we're open to any additional feedback the town council has before we submit the stage two. We do think it's important to start developing an engagement strategy, begin communicating the project to the voters. Again, crafting the generational opportunity narrative for Coventry. And that concludes this draft presentation that we will give to town council. And I believe Mario will certainly be a part of the presentation.
Because it's attractive in the long term, Hillary, do you think that something about the revolving fund should be presented about how we plan on creating a revolving fund and how that might be utilized?
Yeah, like what's gonna seed fund it, just because
Yeah.
this presentation is focusing on the financial piece. Yeah, I would agree. Maybe in Mario's presentation, I mean, he's mentioned it before, he can
Yeah.
probably bring it up.
I just think that the council will see that as a positive of moving forward, is that we're gonna be able to continue to put money into capital over time because of some of the money we're getting now.
So, and
You just keep.
well, I could go over there and grab one. but Thank you. All right, so we're looking to emphasize the revolving fund.
This is plugged in.
Hmm?
It's plugged in.
It should be.
Is it working?
Why, are you dying?
I'm dying.
There's a reset button on the end. Maybe it just, That help you?
Emphasize the revolving fund.
Yeah, that's good for Mario's piece.
Still not charging?
No, it is now.
Okay.
And then that's part of the Coventry's long-term strategy.
And then we'll just articulate what would be the potential seed money, whether it's the sale of a piece of land or. He mentioned what, but it was like a $500,000 number that he said should be the seed money. I forget. He'll know.
Is Lincoln putting their housing aid back into that account? Is that how they're growing? the
No, they
account?
sold a huge piece of land
To get it started.
to get it
But
started.
how do they feed it?
I don't think they need to feed it.
We don't need to
because
feed it once you start it.
When you keep getting reimbursed by the state 2 to 1, it just keeps making.
Which is
money.
the housing aid, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it is the housing. aid.
It's the housing aid comes back, you just put that back in.
For those projects,
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
you know,
But housing aid projects are school department projects. So this would be is that wrong or is that right? Isn't housing
Well-
aid just school department?
Yes.
I think that's how we get the housing aid back, but that's
Right.
not how the housing aid has been utilized up until this point. So
Correct.
it is something we're gonna have to change.
So with the result, where I'm getting there, the revolving fund would be dedicated to just school-based projects.
I think so, because then the capital fund with the town would be its own.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on all.
Just with that, we should be able to make sure that it's the town's revolving fund that goes to school projects. So similar to your capital maintenance now, it's the town's money
Uh-huh.
that's supposed to go to that 3% or what have you. But it makes it so it's not a maintenance of effort.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be done, but I think that's a good differentiator for people, knowing that that money is not a maintenance of effort.
And then the other thing which we haven't spoken about, and I don't know if now's the time or another point, is when we did this project last time, we baked the 3.5% maintenance requirement into the bond.
But
How it was being taken.
I'm not saying we have to do that
my
again.
concern
I'm saying that's
is,
what we did.
are we then in sticker shock when this bond runs out and we now have to make up that difference that was funding it?
So I think what it does is
Mhm.
makes.
We're
it
gonna
so
be
we
back
can-
in the same situation we are now where we're trying to
You'd have
scale
to
up.
back up to it, right?
I think we need to keep it ramped.
I'm fine with that.
I feel like we can keep growing that capital maintenance fund that we have,
Mhm.
part of which right now is dedicated towards the schools, but do some town projects until we get to a place where it's going to have to be more fairly split, and we can slowly grow it instead of right now, we need millions of
Yeah, no.
dollars in a year.
In my opinion,
We slowly grow it over time.
it would not behoove us to make this a kick the can down the road thing.
I just think it makes
Slowly
it
ramp.
attainable, whereas right
Yeah.
now, we really can't do it in the timeline that's been provided to us.
It's like whenever this is, good, when does this no longer qualify as covering maintenance, would you say?
well, when the bond runs out,
When the bond
20
runs
years.
out.
So 20 years,
So you have 20 years to get this together,
fully fund.
but it's very easy to kick the can down the road
Oh,
20
yeah.
years, and then you find out you're in the hole.
I,
know,
I,
50 million.
I would want to see like a resolution from the town
I'd like to,
that says
I'd like to codify.
by,
it.
by X year, you have to have this fully funded.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay,
So the maintenance requirement would be fully funded at that point.
I don't know that we should take 20 years
Well-
to do it, but
By what year, Hillary?
I
I
don't
think it's a
know.
discussion, but I think what would be a great way to do it is to not 100% dedicated to the schools while we're growing it. And it gives us the opportunity to do some town projects while we're
Yes.
doing this huge project for the school.
Yes.
And
So
it-
that- so in other words, already take it out.
Make it part of our capital every year, make a bigger
Like,
capital.
so
fund.
while we're ramping up, whatever is not being fully given to you would give the town an opportunity to get its act together in our facilities.
Because we're just baking it into the budget, so we're slowly
Yeah,
growing it over
because it's
time,
already
so
in.
every year it gets
Yes.
spent.
It's already, it's already.
Yeah,
part
the
of
money's
tax.
earmarked.
Yep.
Depending, if you don't need to dedicate it to the school department because the bond covers it.
Yep.
You can spend it any way you want until you get to the point where you have.
Because our capital's not even funded.
Mhm.
That's the other thing.
So that, I mean, depending on how we spin this whole thing.
Yeah,
That's another thing to
Yeah.
kind of, this doesn't just address school department needs, this could in turn also address,
Town.
town needs as
Yeah.
well. I just don't know how you
She's a feel good
wordsmith
girl.
all that.
I think it's almost a must, because the town has just as many projects that it needs to take care of. And we could be taking care of both.
have it show certain amounts that said, year one, school MMR gets this, town CIP gets this.
Yeah.
Year two, boom, boom, and then.
We
all
tried
the way.
that, and we tried doing that. I started with 200,000. and they got dumped
We have
the
a
next year.
slightly different way that we
I
decide on
understand
the
that, but I'm
budget
just
now.
saying this, and even with the resolution, the problem with the resolution. That resolution only lives as long as your council lives. I know you, I think you guys know that. So like when your council
You'd
is
have to
done.
make it an ordinance.
I said.
Right, you gotta make it
full
an ordinance to
I
make it so it's
misunderstood,
locked
yeah.
in. A resolution dies when your council dies, so there's nothing that mandates that they continue on, so.
That's good to know.
Good point, Ed. Thank you. All right. Off topic from finances, but just a piece of feedback I heard talking to some parents in the community about this. One, this is more for the presentation, about the whole shebang. When I'm telling people about this and they have kids in the school, they're immediately asking me, well, when is this gonna be done?
Mhm.
And they're doing the math in their head of what grade will my kid be in?
Yeah.
They want to know which of these things is my kid gonna benefit from? And I don't blame them for being selfish. I'd want to know, like, what is my kid gonna get out of this?
Mhm.
So I think it's worth saying, like, when we put each of those 4 slides up of like the elementary school, like, classes of, or from X year to X year will be the first in here, or say for the high school, like kids from this class year to this class year will enjoy. Or
Yeah.
will see these, something like that.
And the reason that's a good way of doing it is because their emails all have their class year in them, so you know your kid's class year.
Yeah, because I was talking to some parents even last night at the Tioga PTA, and they were like, oh, my kid's in 4th grade, so. They'll see a new roof at the middle school, I guess, and then I said, but then your kid's gonna have all this new stuff at the high school when they go the next year. So I think that's gonna be important perspective. And that would be part of the marketing effort too.
And I think part of the marketing effort is to the people who don't have kids in schools. I mean, that's 70% of the population who votes. So we need to appeal to all the people in the community that this is good for the community.
But I think we've got to appeal mostly to the people we need to get out and vote, because the people you're talking about, they already vote. I want to change their vote if I can, but we need numbers. Like, we can't have just 4% of the population vote on this. If we don't have a large chunk of the population vote, we're in trouble.
How many people voted for the actual increase, the 250 million? Do we know?
64%.
You can find out.
I don't know the number.
No,
You can find out.
But
you can-
64%.
Well, no, 64% approved.
he's
it.
saying no.
Like,
Oh,
there could have been
those who
100 voters,
voted,
but
those who-
64 voted, yes. But that's
64%
information
come out,
of
it's like 10 or 11% come out.
Might be on the side.
Well, no, but that bond was voted on during the midterms, so probably a lot of people voted. Because it was part of the,
So then you're
General
saying that the
election.
number might.
I think
be
it's a
more
higher number than-
impactful
yeah.
64%.
I'm going to oversimplify a very complex marketing strategy,
Yeah.
but what we have always advised is you focus on the yes votes, and your yes votes are parents. So you get the parents to vote and you will pass. That's a very oversimplification of it. Don't focus on trying to change anybody's vote because it's not gonna happen.
So question 2 in Coventry was 9,003 votes in the affirmative. 5,084 votes to reject it. So it was 64-36.
So that's 9 + 16 is 15,000 people.
And that was question 2, so. I mean, obviously the numbers. Well, actually,
It was still reading.
no, they actually stayed up. There were they're about the same the rest of the way. Some of them dwindled a little bit toward the bottom.
They got the 14.
They
Yeah,
got it
Right.
done.
we get tired here.
My hand hurts. Can I stop sharing? You good?
Yeah.
does anyone else have any questions?
Any other comments on the presentation?
I have a quick comment at the beginning, and I know the focus is finance, but at the beginning, when you had the slide about consolidating 3 schools into one,
Mhm.
I wonder if it's still important to mention that the reason we're taking 3 schools offline, well, many reasons, but a big one is the newer and fewer reimbursement. And I think we just know that and forget, but it wasn't mentioned.
Oh, I didn't talk about bonuses
Yeah, there's
here.
no slide here. with the-
No, why
This
talk
slide
about getting
bonuses,
bonuses.
Like, this hits this one, this hits that.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
first question I
Oh,
got
so
asked and was, well, why can't you just renovate this school?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking through the eyes of.
And, the question I keep getting asked, well, what's gonna happen with this school? Everyone wants to know what's gonna happen with the building. we're gonna have to come up with a list of the possibilities.
Ghost moving.
So that
Exit out
that is
Wednesday.
important for the FAQs sheet that you'll want to have firmly in place when you start campaigning.
A question that springs to mind for me is, we were gonna spend $89 million on a school that we're now putting $3.5 million
Yes.
into to fix the roof.
That's what actually made me think of the talking more about the newer, you can't do a new middle school, newer and fewer.
Right.
Get that reimbursement.
That you have
Right,
to
that's-
speak to,
This is part one of two parts.
Mhm.
And maybe, I mean, we talked about this in other presentations. The Coventry needs are great.
Right, I mean, I'm
You-
just
you-
saying,
You are at a fork in the road.
with us, we talk about it a lot, but I do, that is something that just kind of springs to mind to a group that the last presentation they were shown is now kind of an also ran in this presentation.
because that's what
And I
I
think
said
you're
at the
right.
beginning, I said, wait, I thought our middle school was a total loss. And it turns out the roof solves a good issue to start, but
The middle school, and then this is off track here,
Yeah.
but the middle school project was much more about the programmatic changes that would have occurred there, and it involved a considerable amount of demolition and a considerable amount of new construction that is similar to the new construction we're planning at the elementary school. So if you tell me you had $170 million, then you'd be doing two major projects, but you don't. So.
I think your answer is fine, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
expect the question.
Yeah, sure, yeah, definitely.
And I liked, the making certain to let people know if that project wouldn't have gotten us the same level of reimbursement as this project will, and they both were necessary projects.
good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. What's your back?
All right. Up next, item number 6, property appraisals update. Ed, I know you've been working with the appraisal company on that.
Marissa Mann, I spoke to her last week. She was only aware of obviously the first two schools, Hopkins Hill and Tyoke, so she was starting the process. Those appraisals, those are supposed to be done by about January 9th. I also told her we need to do the other one as well as appraisal on the land, the potential site. She advises me that site's gonna take probably 4 to 6 weeks to do that. The what do you call it? The school loan should be done in about another 4. So we've got a little bit of delay. She's also saying the value of the appraisal on the land alone is pretty much an iffy kind of thing. She's not gonna be able to get a really top-notch solid number. She says that it's bare land alone in a situation and not having a lot of potential other properties that have sold some comps in
No
this
comps.
area. So it's just an iffy thing. Currently, right now, the land is valued and taxed at slightly over $2 million, and they're paying about $43,000 a year in
This is the
taxes
big
on it.
wheel property,
Yes, the potential
or
site.
whatever at Kmart.
Yeah. Almax, Kmart, great little Chinese restaurant that used to be in there years ago.
So
Um,
it's assessed, it's tax assessed at a little over 2, because I think it
Yeah,
on
a
the
little
market.
over
for
2,
2.2.
just slightly over 2, like I said, 43,000 annual on that.
Is anyone in talks with them?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because I feel like we need to get on their radar. Because they probably have other people, or may have other people.
How do
who are
we start
reaching out.
that process?
I mean, it was.
Call the number on the
it was
sign.
it was in the news About that it being for sale, you know.
But
I know,
who's,
I know.
which real estate agent is holding?
There's a
There's
sign
not
on
a
the,
sign on there.
with a phone number on it.
Ed, who would reach out?
Yeah,
Didn't
who's the
Mr. Pasqua reach out to the
Yeah.
official?
He needs to, I think he needs to stay away, though. You can't
Right.
have an elected official influencing a real estate
Jonathan needs to
transaction.
stay out of that
Yeah.
completely.
So who's the person?
It's gonna have to be somebody that's associated with the town.
Someone who's able to make the purchase.
Yeah. Let me talk to Steve, Stephen tomorrow on that.
Okay.
And see what he's suggesting on there. I mean, do you guys have a plan B on this in case this property?
This,
Sitting in it.
you're
This,
sitting in it.
Yeah, well, okay. Because again, my concern is, I know when they buried everything and all the things are there, if this thing needs a phase 2 environmental done, that could be timely and quite expensive if it comes to that.
Mhm.
That's all, I'm just wondering what 2 is. So if this is Plan B, then there's a lot of things that we have to consider on Plan B, which is where everything's going from here. So there's a lot more that's involved on that, but I'll talk to Steven tomorrow. I'll get more info. Also see what I can do on speeding her up if you'd like, on getting us those appraisals, if we can do that.
Well, just in case someone is looking to buy it and willing to pay the asking price, we need to at least see if they would be willing to work with us.
Okay. So we'll get Hopkins Hill and Tyoke by the 9th.
We're supposed to, yes.
And with Monday, and Black Rock will come toward the end of the month. And then we won't hear on the appraisal for Stop and Shop until mid-February.
Correct. In that
Okay,
ballpark.
we just need to have the appraisal paperwork when we make the official purchase to get the reimbursement
Well,
from the
and-
state.
Does us getting an appraisal count as the official appraisal to buy a piece of property? Like, I could go through a bank, they need to,
Mario just said, in order for us to reimburse you, we need to see an official appraisal,
Official for
so.
Yeah, I think that would be to approve the purchase. I think we will be able to submit the stage 2 in February and work through this. But I think before you start campaigning too much, you will want to have a pretty good understanding of whether that building is there
Yep.
or somewhere else.
Agreed.
And if you're looking at a May vote and you want to back that up a certain amount of time to when the campaign is starting, you probably want to get this deal locked up by the end of March. And if you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks for an appraisal from mid-January, you are at least contingent to purchase by the end of March, beginning of April. Everything is just compressed,
Mhm.
that's all. It's all doable, but it just needs to
Yeah.
keep going.
And that the price has to be the same as the appraisal.
Yeah, we can only get reimbursed.
Can't be
for the
more
appraisal.
than.
You can only get reimbursed.
Yeah.
Housing.
I would say the property is like talking to them is gonna be a primary.
I think
like,
that's a high
like,
priority.
right away. Where we're in,
Well, because Plan A might not be even,
but yeah, Plan A doesn't happen, what happens?
and
next?
Mhm.
we
Doesn't
might
sound like
want to
this
try
is
to think of
great.
a Plan C.
And if,
That's always an option because this is,
It's a
again,
lot of
I
effort.
brought it up last meeting and I'm late to this whole game over here. Turning this building into that project and putting this building down is going to cost the town a ton of money to move and put people in, I mean, our school department admin building, where is that going? I mean, that alone, they take up 25,000 square feet of space in this building. The building is about 22, actually. Building's about 80,000, 85,000 square feet. We've got projects that are running in here all the time where it's, Parks and Rec is utilizing the building. The gym is used almost daily. Several departments are located in here. All of that's gonna have to be moved. We're gonna have to find a place for it. There's a
You're
cost.
preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
I don't wanna.
I know,
go-
I know, but I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
I don't wanna go down every department, but
I'm just saying, we've got a lot there that we gotta look at.
yeah, I know, but we also, we have to move ahead with the project. I mean. If there's other land on our records or register that we should consider. That's great, but the thing is, we're closing Eastern Elementary Schools, so we have to relatively keep it to the eastern side of town, which is at a premium for land.
Yes, it is.
So. I mean,
Without using swing space for students.
that's the thing too. It's not like we can demo at say the Black Rock property because we need swing space to put the kids. We then have to say invest in bringing Oak Haven up to snuff to put the Black Rock kids in while that property got developed on.
It'd be cheaper to do modulars at
That-
that point.
that's what
That
I
building
mean.
is So far gone.
Which are not reimbursable.
No. And expensive.
So. All right, so you'll talk to Steve tomorrow, okay?
We'll see you tomorrow on that and, need be, I can call up looking for, interested in the property.
Yeah, just at least
See what they're asking. for,
get
at
a
least.
bug in their ear.
Yep.
Yep,
See what they're looking for.
Is it the Stop and Shop people who own it?
yes. Okay,
The picture of the sign is all over the web, so it'd be easy Google search to get the phone number.
on 7, facilities condition index scores, you said Mario
I-
have those Friday.
I texted Mario, he said Friday.
Okay, so we'll get those soon. Item 8, capital marketing campaign.
Yeah, so, just grab my book. So I talked to our legal counsel just to find out, get some guidance about how we would go about marketing. So he said with his experience with other communities, we would essentially have to form like a PAC.
Yep.
And the PAC would have to be registered with the Board of Elections, and they would have to do campaign finance reporting, periodically, whatever the periodic
Yeah. I mean,
times.
hopefully we don't have to do it for 1 year.
Right. And he doesn't think, it's a good idea for elected officials to be part of the PAC, only because many of you already have other fundraising going for your own stuff, and sometimes it gets a little bit confusing when you have your own fundraising and you're doing PAC work, so he doesn't think elected officials make a whole lot of sense. He said it's always more impactful when it's community members. It can be employees of the school department or the town if they're community members. He doesn't think it should be somebody like me
Mm,
or somebody like Amy, for example, like high upper administration, because he thinks that not that we would do anything wrong, but you don't want to put anybody in a position where somebody's assuming something is going on when it's not.
mhm.
But if there's a parent who happens to work for us, there's nothing wrong with that.
So you don't have to name a name, but do you have some people in mind?
Sure, I just would have to
Ask them
do
first.
some phone calls. And so what we would essentially have to do is form this PAC. And then they would have to fundraise to get started with some funding. And then we would have to, they would have to then work with a marketing company, the PR
Mhm.
firm. And typically what they do is they collect from they would get donations, and they would use those donations to then pay for whoever the PR firm is.
Yeah,
And sometimes those donations are fairly large because there's a lot of people in the construction industry that want to see projects. And so different unions and different individuals will donate because they want to see projects move forward. It's in their best interest.
that's another reason why I think it behooves us to move the sale of this or the purchase of this property through, because I think a big fundraising point would be, we're putting a huge elementary school on Tyoke Ave near your business.
Mhm.
This would bring you business. You would want to see this succeed, kind of a thing.
So I think what we should probably do is I could brainstorm a list. I could sit with Amy, we can come up with some ideas. Make some phone calls
Mhm.
of people that might be interested, who have a skill set that goes with this. I know when Cranston formed theirs, they literally had like a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, like the PAC had roles and responsibilities, and they met. And
They're opening a bank account, they might have to.
mhm.
Yep.
I'm not an expert in campaign finance.
They'll need
laws or
a
anything, but
treasurer that signs on and everything
Right.
else. Yep.
the school department can help them get themselves organized, but we're not paying from our general fund anything.
The Tyoke PTA executive board is very strong. They were really good PTA. I would check with them.
Mhm.
And isn't there a town PTA e-board? Like, there used to be, some have jumped into
Oh, a
PTOs
townwide.
now.
There was at one
People from
point,
different PTOs would jump.
I don't think there is anymore, because there's been a little bit of a shift in the last few
PTO,
years. Some are
PTA.
PTOs, some are PTAs, so there's been a little bit of a shift.
I know like Tyoke is now involved in like the national and the state official one. And then I think there's PTOs that aren't, they're just like
So I think they're
independent.
PCA.
Yeah.
I want to say at least
remember
two of
when
our
that
schools are
went down.
PTOs, and I think 3 might be PTAs, and middle school, I'm not sure, or the high school, with the elementaries. So that's sort of was his recommendation. So,
Okay.
we can move forward with that. He said, if we get to a point where we're looking for ideas of, who we want to consider working with this PAC in terms of the PR work,
Mhm.
if he has different groups that have worked with different communities that he could recommend. And I said,
Maybe what we do is if people have ideas, send them to you and you can submit it to whoever to make the phone calls.
Mhm.
So did he give is there a target that we should be raising? Because we're looking at a runway of about 3 months between, say, the stage 2 submission. We have to have the ballot language approved by the middle of March for an early May referendum, so.
He did not give me a timeline, but I wonder if Phil, if we can talk to some other communities that have done tight campaigns.
We're looking for a financial.
I'm looking
goal
for a
or-
figure, like what's an ideal amount to raise?
Right. In a short
Because-
amount of time.
Because you're not just paying the consultant, if you wanted to do any digital ad buys, ads in the paper, mailers, that's not included in the consultant's fee, so I'm just curious.
That's quite.
I'll tell you one thing we're trying, and I'll have some data to back it up, I think, in a few months. Is we are using Cox Communications to do some digital marketing for our Career Tech Center. Targeted marketing to people's email boxes and their devices and even on their commercials that they run. Because we're trying to find a way to spread the word, and some of the traditional methods are just not working anymore. So
Okay,
once we get some data off the, they said they'll be able to provide us some metrics about clicks and click-throughs and
Mhm.
things like that.
so you and Amy will come up with some prospective people to start the PAC. A prospective list of seed money donors to get us started. And then,
Maybe Phil can just help us get an idea of how much money we need for a tight campaign, because this is not a long campaign.
No.
This is gonna be a tight one.
it's not a slow burn.
I know last time we did this, we had 1 or 2 presentations. I can't remember the dollar amounts associated with them, but we had 1 or 2 presentations from people.
One thing I can comment upon that Newport was very successful when their campaign effort, and as well as Portsmouth, was when it was grassroots based, rather simple. Both communities went to where their constituents went. For Newport, it was a particular liquor store that they would just stand out and give flyers all day long. And at Portsmouth, it was at the dump where they would stand and give out flyers. So it's really a grassroots targeted effort. So
See right now.
you all need to talk about in Coventry, where do your constituents go? So that you can make them aware of this opportunity. And having something that they can, and a lot of it was that these people were not even aware that there was going to be this election. And of course, oh, yes, we will support schools. Thank you for giving us this information. So, in addition to hammering the parents as much as possible.
So Phil, I just want to ask though, and I know I brought this up before, but like we haven't really officially put this even out there in the community. So we're going to try to recruit some people to do this marketing piece, which is out there. But is there like, is there like some benefit to us first starting with like our staff and our individual school PTOs or PTAs, like first, so that people don't say, well, I found out about this from, like,
Facebook.
yeah, like I just, and
The liquor
somebody
store.
else got to write it the way they wanted it to. I don't think there's enough information out there just
Right.
to our staff, like even our administrators. I'll just.
Well, we've been pretty cautious because
Right.
everything
Kind of felt bad
evolves.
before, so I feel like that has to be a strategy or figure out, I'm asking you, should that be our first strategy before we actually start to recruit and it goes out on Facebook?
Amy, I think you have a great idea. We need to do that. But I think we need to be firm in our description of what the product is. Right now, we don't know if the product is on Tioga Avenue or it's here. We don't know if the product is open concept or maybe a traditional style rooms. We don't know those kinds of things yet. So we need to very quickly decide what is the product that we're trying to sell. And then look for the benefits and features. Then we can go out and start to do the kinds of things that you're advocating that we do. And we can start with the staff, certainly. But I
Could it
mean,
be start a buzz? Without, first of all, yeah, you're right. You have to know what property this is gonna be on, and that has to be consummated.
it's a product. What's the
Yeah.
product? I call it
And
a
then-
product, but
I think you have to make sure you put guardrails on the discussion too, because at this point, we can't go down the the nitty gritty of like, where are these kids gonna be redistricted to? And
Right.
what are you gonna do for my
Yeah.
professional development if it's this? And I think we have to keep it like, we, you know, this is out of 3,000 foot view, what we're looking
Yeah.
at. Because I think you wanna curb
Yeah,
the panic
I,
at the outset.
I understand that too. I just want, so many of our staff live in town. So we want them to see the benefit of this right now.
Sure.
So that's where some people get a lot of their information is from their neighbor who's a teacher
Mhm.
or an administrator. And I just feel like those kinds of conversations need to happen in our schools first.
Well, I think you have two conversations to have with your teachers too, is what's gonna happen to us for the ones who the buildings are taken down
Exactly.
for, and why not us
Exactly.
for the
Like
other ones?
that brings up that next level. Like, once we have our staff, I think that's something internally, like in-house that Don and I have to have a conversation about, like,
Mhm.
you know, protecting, you know, the union's gonna be involved in this, right? So we want them to know that this isn't about like eliminating people's jobs right now.
Cause it's the same amount of kids, they're just under one roof.
Right.
I think it's somehow too, we just need to focus on, we're like building a new school and.
Yeah.
And I know that what will be overarching is that we're closing 3 schools. That's the scariest part, I think.
It will be scary for those 3 communities. too.
Yeah.
So we have to sell the.
We're building a
we're
new
building a new
school.
school. And I think
For
it's
you.
really important, like, when, one of the things, Phil, when he does presentations, he shows us what it's going to look like, right?
Mhm.
And that gets us excited about, because we all know what it looks like inside, and those are the things we have to do with our staff too, is, you know, what could it be? And they don't have that picture. The only people that have any kind of that picture is the middle school right now. So,
And like I had mentioned earlier in this meeting, we have to emphasize that RIDE is pushing us in this direction. They're saying, we're giving you a hell of a lot more money if you can.
agreed.
So I think that
Agreed.
the educators have to understand that too.
I agree.
It isn't a campaign to
need them.
build first, you know, like excitement and understanding
Yes.
first. So,
Mhm.
you know, a corporation normally does. The executive team learns about it, the executive team cascades it down, then the other ones cascade, and then it goes to all colleagues and employees.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that be somewhat kind of like, this is what's coming down the pipeline, this is the, you know, call it a product, call it whatever, this is where it's gonna be, and just create that, but without giving all the information that we don't even know yet.
Is there potential to disseminate this before the council votes on it? So that way they
I think it
can.
has to be.
Yeah,
I mean, who would want to find out about it?
Oh, no, I
think-
agree, but I'm asking if
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
possible.
Well,
Professional development days coming up?
there are, and we have to talk about those as well. One of them is scheduled for March, which is a full day. The kids are home that day on a asynchronous learning day. We had talked about, and I didn't even talk to Amy about this, so I'm glad she's sitting over there and not next to me. Mario had mentioned if we have to do the vote in person in May, that we potentially look at changing that PD day from March to May, like switch those days, because he said
We're gonna need the school.
you're gonna
buildings
need the
to-
school buildings. to do
Because
the
it's a
vote.
Title 17, it's not gonna just be like a budget vote where you use your 5 locations and that's it.
So we would potentially, that's why I'm sitting over here.
Yeah.
We would potentially have to switch those days. So the March PD day would be a early release day, like the rest of them have been. And then the May day would be the full day off. The reason why I bring that up is I had already said to Amy early on that I was thinking for the March day to have a district-wide faculty meeting first and then break up into smaller groups because I haven't had a chance to address them yet as the superintendent. And I thought it would be a nice opportunity to talk about some priorities, this being one of them. But if that's not gonna happen till May, that's late. So we could do it in other ways. You know, we can go to faculty meetings and do a roadshow and just, you know, talk to people. But to what Anna was saying, the cascading has already started, you know, because the executive group and the principals somewhat they're fairly aware of what's going
Going
on.
to schools.
But
And it's-
but the teachers haven't had like that deep conversation yet. Or the teacher assistants, that's what I mean.
Because that's the other element to this is the council gonna be having a vote on this in February in front of an empty chamber?
You don't want that. You want support.
I think we need to get ahead of it much sooner
Mhm.
than these PD days. I'm thinking even of January 10th and the buzz that's gonna
Yes.
come out of
Yeah.
that meeting and just with social media. And
Mhm.
I think in absence of our message, people
Mhm.
will create their own.
I totally agree.
So what do we think we can do?
Well, I know, I mean, this is like a little toe in the water, but every Friday I send a message out to the staff. So I can definitely write something on Friday, because everybody gets that, and I hope
Let's say
everybody
coming up on
reads it.
Tuesday.
And then, try to find an opportunity to then get in front of people, face to face. But I would be able to promote,
The priority is gonna be the three that are consolidating, I would imagine.
so the other thing I did is,
Three that are getting
I
used.
don't
Yeah,
necessarily
salary
think so.
Conversation is gonna be.
And I'm just thinking like if I was like a teacher in one of those buildings that you were closing, I don't know if I'd want to hear it through like an email.
I know.
almost feel like,
the email wouldn't be that
For the-
detailed, that
okay.
detailed. It
Yeah.
would just be about the,
I think we
Yeah,
have to
the
go to those
project in
schools
general.
and
I
have
agree.
conversations with
Yeah.
those teachers.
Yeah.
we'd have to go to, staff meetings. Faculty meetings. So the other thing I did was one of the school committee members and then the rest of the school committee, we had discussed about having our meetings at different locations. And I had mapped out doing one meeting a month at each of the elementary schools until the end of the year. And I actually purposely had put those three schools as the first three schools.
Okay,
So we could actually have items there for people to come in. And we could present, and that could be parents and staff, but that's another opportunity because we would be.
good
after it.
opportunity to test run
Mhm.
Phil's presentation too.
When do you have those set up then?
Right now, I have them mapped out for, I was gonna do Black Rock, January 26th. I was gonna do, I haven't brought to the school committee yet. I was gonna do Hopkins Hill in February, and I was gonna do Tioga in March. But. And then do Washington Open Western after that. Bill,
My gut feeling is that probably throughout the month of January, whatever's left of it, we need to go to those three schools.
Yeah,
Agree.
Which will do.
Mhm.
Those meetings are more like almost campaigning.
They are.
type of
Yes,
meetings.
they are.
But I don't think people will want to be campaigned to until they know what they're talking about. So
So maybe Amy, what we can do is find out when the faculty meetings are.
Not one.
None in January.
Oh, because of PD day.
Day.
Yeah.
Can you not do like an optional informational session? I mean, I think
We
if. with the
because if
buzz
I'm a
like this,
teacher
I
in
feel like-
those schools and I hear there's a meeting about it, I might make time to go.
And if you can, give it a Zoom link.
Mhm.
For the
Yeah, if you
teachers,
could watch
so
at
that,
home or
okay,
something.
I can't stay, but I want to hear what's going on.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll figure it
we
out.
could also, yeah, we could also try to figure move February, say, forego February's
Mhm.
meeting and do a January,
Yep.
just in those schools. Just move PD.
We'll coordinate with Phil.
before the February 15th submission is probably
Yes,
the important part. And the votes are happening late in February, February 9th and February.
Whatever it was.
Maybe before we submit, so. Let's do it in January, I think we'll be fine.
So you
We'll
have
figure
to
it
get
out.
that messaging ready.
Yeah, we'll get that out.
Yeah, it's gotta be
and-
just on target.
Regarding the product, I would probably not go down the path of
Changing.
changing any type of curriculum delivery method or anything like that. You
Yeah.
focus on,
mhm,
hey, you got three lousy schools, we're gonna give you one
Yeah.
brand new school.
Yep.
And by the way, we're gonna do it smartly by consolidating all three.
Yep.
It's a pretty simple message.
Yeah.
It's not very controversial because you're not, essentially, you're not cutting,
Right.
Yeah.
Your enrollment's not dropping and all that other stuff. So we can have a short, succinct, clean presentation that
And
would really
probably
make
then,
people feel happy.
for that group, if you're gonna add anything, it would be more on the, and then this is the next phase of the project, this is
Oh,
what we hope for after.
yeah,
this.
after, the wonderful opportunity for engagement and discussion of how Coventry could expand, blah, blah, blah.
but at the
And I
end.
would love to do like, we could do as a Zoom, like a Zoom meeting just for all administrators first.
Mhm.
So we have a big Zoom meeting, maybe Phil could come on and just have all administrators on a Zoom
Mhm.
meeting to hear it first and kind of ask questions, because the day after the meeting that you and I go to or whatever, and Phil, they're gonna have questions and they're gonna ask the principal and they're gonna say, this is the first I've heard it. I think that we give principals and
Yeah,
administrators an
there's nothing worse
opportunity
than that.
to have that conversation,
Yep. good
ask
point.
questions, and then we go to the faculty,
Yep.
so.
We could try to negotiate, moving the June faculty meeting
Oh, yeah.
to this month. I think Hopkins Hill or somebody's doing that.
Oh,
I
that's
think it's
great.
Hopkins Hill.
Oh, that's great.
And then, yeah, and then that could be soon.
Yeah.
I mean, depending, you'd have to talk to Kelly.
Yeah.
Crew.
We could make that happen. Yeah. And you don't want to, we'll tell you in June. No.
Surprise. Okay,
Okay, good. I'm glad we had this conversation. Great point, Amy. Anything else on the capital campaign? So, we talked about the action items for that, so we're good. Okay. Finance, item 9, we kind of already talked about this
yeah.
in the presentation. Does anyone else have any questions on the packet that Harold handed out? I think the only thing was, we just gotta get, Massaroni to work it up, so we have more official numbers for, Tuesday.
I think the only thing you wanted to add in finance was about the revolving.
Yes, but that one's going to Mario's, slide, yeah. Okay. Review of project deadlines and timeline, we've kind of been doing that
Yeah.
the whole night. Is there anything else that we're not thinking of? We talked about, so the 10th is enabling legislation. The 12th is your presentation or 26th?
26.
26th is school committee initial presentation, 24th is town council initial. When are you voting on it? The 9th, February 9th, and then the town council has to pick, we have to bump up our thing to get in before the 15th.
So our next meeting is the 18th, the school building committee. And that's the meeting that Phil says we need to vote for
Yeah,
stage 2.
Okay.
Make our
does
recommendation.
everyone have that on their calendars? That's an important one.
The 18th, what day of the week is that?
Wednesday.
Wednesday,
Yep.
okay.
2 week,
Same time, same place,
yes.
okay.
You're not saying the room, unless people wait for the couch and you. do that.
I think it's on my calendar.
Okay. Item 11, public comments.
Oh, we're not doing that right anymore.
Anyone? Once? Twice? 3 times?
Before we adjourn, are you Robert? Yes. Oh, I just wasn't sure if you wanted to say hi, seeing as you're probably gonna be
I
announcing.
was gonna wait till after I just introduced.
Okay.
Okay.
See, we were at the end of the meeting right before adjournment. You're public, but that's up to you.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 7:54 PM.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Guys have it, we